When you think about 90s comedy, there's really one face that comes to mind. A rubber face with this just wild energy. Jim Carrey. He didn't just star in comedies, he basically was comedy for an entire decade. But the real story here isn't just about the laughs. It's about the unbelievable struggle that came before the fame. And the really surprising path he took after he got to the top.
I mean, to really get how huge this guy was, all you have to do is look at one single year, 1994. In February, he drops Ace Ventura, Pet Detective. Then in July, he becomes a living cartoon in The Mask. And to finish the year off, just a little movie called Dumb and Dumber in December. We're talking 3 iconic, massive hits in 1 year. It wasn't just a hot streak, it was a complete and total takeover of comedy.
So you gotta ask, right? How does anybody pull that off? How do you dominate an entire genre so completely, so fast? And maybe the bigger question is, once you're on top of the world, what do you do then? Well, the answer isn't some Hollywood secret. It starts much, much earlier than that. Yeah, before the giant paychecks, before the sold-out movie theaters, there was this whole other side of his story that most of us never saw. This was absolutely not an overnight success story. It was a desperate climb out of some serious hardship. And here's where the story gets really, really tough. When he was a teenager, Jim's family fell on such hard times that they actually lost their home. Their new residence, it was a Volkswagen van. The entire family living together inside a van. So to help them survive, a young Jim Carrey had to drop out of school. Think about that. As a teenager, he and his brother were working these grueling 8-hour overnight shifts at a tire factory, working as janitors and security guards just to help the family get by. That was his reality, long before he was ever near a movie set. So you'd think when he finally got on stage, he was a natural, right? Wrong. It was a complete disaster. His very first stand-up gig at the Yuck Yucks Comedy Club in Toronto was so bad that the owner just described his act as bad, rich, little. Ouch. He bombed so badly, it took him years to even get the confidence to try it again. And for any comedian in the 80s, the absolute dream was getting on Saturday Night Live. So Carrey auditions in 1980. He gets rejected. He tries again in 85, rejected again. He gives it one more shot in 86, still rejected. But here's the best part. A decade later, in 1996, he finally walks out on that stage, not as a new cast member, but as the host, a full-blown movie star. All right, so let's jump back to that amazing year, 1994, because now that you know the backstory, it all hits a little different, doesn't it? This wasn't luck. This was the explosive result of years and years of relentless drive. Ace Ventura kicks it all off as this out-of-nowhere hit. Then, The Mask just explodes, making over $350 million worldwide. And to top it off, Dumb and Dumber brings in another $270 million. In just 10 months, Jim Carrey went from a well-known TV comic to one of the most bankable movie stars on the entire planet. And this is what really cemented his status. Just 2 years later, for the movie The Cable Guy, Carrey got paid $20 million. He was the very first comedic actor to join that $20 million club. I mean, just think about that journey for a second. From living in a van to commanding one of the biggest paychecks in Hollywood history. So after he reached the absolute peak of the comedy mountain, Carrey did something that nobody, and I mean nobody, expected. He pivoted. He started deliberately moving away from the exact kind of roles that made him a superstar to explore a totally different side of himself. And all of a sudden, it was like there were 2 Jim Carreys. You have the comedian we all knew from Ace Ventura and Liar Liar, but then this other guy started showing up. This serious, dramatic actor in movies like The Truman Show, Man on the Moon, and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. He was basically refusing to be put in a box. And this wasn't just some vanity project, you know? The critics went wild. He won back-to-back Golden Globes for Best Actor, and get this, not in the comedy category, but for Best Actor in a Drama. First for The Truman Show, then for Man on the Moon. He even got a BAFTA nomination for Eternal Sunshine. The same industry that once just saw him as a goofball was now giving him its highest awards. The praise was just incredible. CNN's review of Eternal Sunshine called his performance, and I'm quoting here, his best, most mature, and sharply focused performance ever. This wasn't Jim Carrey trying to be serious. This was Jim Carrey proving he was one of the most versatile actors of his entire generation. So who is the real Jim Carrey? Well, beyond the comedian and the celebrated actor, there's this really complex artist and thinker who expresses himself in ways that have nothing to do with a movie screen. For starters, he's a painter, and a pretty amazing one at that. There's a fantastic little documentary about it called I Needed Color. He's also a published author. He wrote a children's book and a really unique novel. And for a few years, he was a very active political cartoonist, and he even had a gallery show for his artwork. A huge part of his worldview is something called the law of attraction. He told his famous story to Oprah about how when he was a struggling actor, he wrote himself a check for $10 million for acting services rendered. He post-dated it and kept it in his wallet. 7 years later, he got his paycheck for Dumb and Dumber for that exact amount. And his public life has also run parallel to this very deep, private, spiritual journey. He's talked openly about having a profound awakening, a moment where his whole sense of self just dissolved. He explained it by saying, quote, "I was no longer a fragment of the universe. I was the universe." It really shows you he's a man searching for meaning far beyond just fame and money. So, from a homeless teenager to a comedy icon to a celebrated dramatic actor and a searching artist, Jim Carrey has never stopped reinventing himself. And that really leaves us with the ultimate question, doesn't it? After a lifetime of wearing so many different masks, what face will he decide to show the world next?